The students seemed to like that. Early on, the guy that wrote Biz Minor, which was a faculty member, just volunteered to give it, and it was just very easy to learn.
Faculty member at
It was he was
one of the
actually
departments?
at he was actually in one of the Texas schools, not one of the big
Oh,
ones. It
okay.
was UT, Texas A&M, but it was like
At
West.
campus,
It was,
yeah.
yeah, their West campus or whatever. So
Oh, that's the one Mark had taught at.
yeah, so
Yeah.
so basically, and I like that because you could just kind of quickly visualize and see everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, since then, I got feedback too that it was time to move away from that tool, but the tools have also evolved,
Yeah.
since then too.
Yeah, for sure. So this guy had come into the lab a couple times, installed software.
Yeah.
Did he relocate here, or was he just
He
flying
did.
in?
Then
Oh, okay.
yeah, so he retired, and then he's
Okay.
lived. And what he liked to do is he taught data mining in his career, and then what happened was that when he would try to teach the students a concept, there were really not good visualizations to show them what he did. So he's a programmer. He's kind of like a Conan, where he just programs and just can do stuff really quickly. And so he just started making visualizations to show them each piece.
Yeah.
And then they'd get it because they could see it.
Yeah.
So over time, then it just sort of like developed. Well, I liked his approach, and I liked how visual it was, and so I taught with it for a while. Plus, I felt kind of a loyalty to him because he had just contributed and just helped me with the course, gave me the tool.
Yeah.
So I probably stayed with his tool longer than I should have, just out of loyalty. So, but anyway, a couple of years ago, the feedback was strong enough where it was just time to move, so I did. So last year, what I did was I wrote a My Educator course and had the 3 students help me.
Yeah.
And then I moved everything over to Jump, and the students really like that because at least it's an industry tool. It's in a lot of use. And then people didn't say move to, and the students liked that. It got well reviewed. It was 4.5 out of 5.
Yeah, that's great.
And it was pretty good. It's not 4.7, but it was, and they were, both sections got exactly that. And the other thing was that I looked for any sort of like comments. There were a few comments about how some of my keys weren't clear, some of my assignments weren't clear, and last year I got none of those comments. So getting over to Jump, and then also really working on cleaning up the assignments and things, all those sort of like comments just resolved themselves. They just went away. And last year, if you looked at my comments last year, there were really no criticisms.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, we made some real progress.
Doesn't it feel good? You're like, all right, I put in all this effort, and I can see the impact, at least from the students' perception.
And then this time they didn't say we should do it in Python, but I just instinctively thought it's time to put some Python in, and because it's evolving and emerging, and it's something that the students have some background in. They've taken a course or 2 in Python, and then the libraries for doing Python are now involved, and they're not as well developed as ours. There are not as many libraries, but there's enough you can do a lot.
Yeah.
So then you're aware that this time what I did is I got together with Mark and said, look, let's both work on getting some Python in our course. And so what I did is I sat down and recruited these 3 students and said, let's put in 8 days in Python, and we'll do a blend of Jump and Python, and throw in a little Azure when neither Python or Jump will do what we want to do. And there's a few places where Azure can do some things that the other 2 don't. So my goal was to sort of like show them that you didn't need to be intimidated by doing Python. And I really think it's worked. I haven't got the evaluations yet, but when I've asked in class, are you liking it? They're like, yeah, I really like it. So
well, I just think that if we can, I guess there's different philosophies, but one, if we can teach them foundational knowledge, and then 2, couple that with a tool that they feel like they can use, and in this case maybe provide them with a couple different options of tools. I think you hit different segments with each tool, and some might come back and say, well, I'd prefer to go deeper in one, but hey, that's the trade-off, and you're not going to be able to do anything about that. But I bet you're picking up some others that appreciate this other tool that wouldn't have appreciated the first or whatever.
So I think, and then I think the tools are becoming, I think the students are, my goal was to sort of like say, look, I'm going to teach you this foundation knowledge and show you 2 or 3 different tools that are good.
Yep.
that are used in various, and then I want you to feel like you can just adapt to any tool.
Yeah.
Because what happens is they go out in industry and whatever shop
Yep.
they go to, they have their own tool, or they use Python, or they use R or something. But I wanted them to say, look, I want you to realize that if you understand what the algorithms are doing and the methodology well enough where you can evaluate how well each algorithm is doing, then you can just quickly adapt.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in my class alone, they worked on 3 tools, 2 a lot and 1 a little.
Yeah.
A lot with Python, and a lot with Jump, and then
a little with
Azure.
Azure. Didn't you do some stuff with R a couple years back in
we did
that class?
Last year we did some R.
And what was the reaction about that? And
they were fine with that, and I got no criticisms about R. But I just sort of like instinctively knew that since most of my class is IS guys.
Yeah, and that they have some Python background and experience, is like, oh, now I can use it in this other way also.
Exactly. So I just made an intuitive decision. Just said, look, R worked. And was well received, but let's just get to Python. And then there's about a third of my class that are from a variety of other majors, some public management, civil engineering, Mac, MBA, and so, but they seem to be able to pick up the Python using the Python libraries too, just like when I taught it with R. They were they were able to get it and pick up on enough of the syntax. So that's sort of like become that, okay. Now what's happened is mine used to be the first course, and now it's the second course.
Yeah.
And now 415 is taught before it, and what Mark kind of focuses on is he has them do everything in Azure.
Yeah.
And this time he had them do a few things in R, but I talked to him a week ago, and he said, I think I'm just going to stay in Azure, because is it okay if they just keep doing things in R in your course? And I said, fine.
Yeah.
And so what he does is he really focuses on kind of an tools at implementation, and they make calculators, they make product suggestors, kind of like the Amazon model, and they do things like that. And so, and Azure is fine. Azure is he also has them pull data sets out of Azure, out of their data services, and use them in the algorithms. And so I think that's good. And he tells the students, we're going to go broad and thin. I'm going to kind of like expose you to a whole bunch, but not very deep. And you're going to feel frustrated because sometimes you'll say, gee, I wish I understood how the algorithm worked.
Yeah.
But he says, when you get in Dr. Dean's class, then he'll take you down.
Yeah.
And I do. And I've asked the students, well, do you feel like now that as we go down on each algorithm that you're really understanding it? And they say yes. So what happened is I used to get them green, and it was harder to take them very far because I had to go start from the beginning. Now Mark moves them along, and they come into me further along,
pretty primed,
and they're able to be more competent and confident by the time it's all done, and they're all just sort of like, yeah, I can do this. And so I think that's been, it made me retool some of my curriculum because I had to put it after his instead of be at the front. Okay, so I've gone now through 2 years of heavy redos.
Yep.
And he's gone in build up and get it ready, and do some redos. And so now I think they're kind of like firming up into what they're doing. I don't see me backing away from Python. I think we're just staying there.
Yeah.
And Jump, and I think I'll stay with Jump because it shows you visually everything so well. It's just, Python is not great for visualizations. It does basic visualizations. But Jump has some very, very sophisticated visualizations. So anyway, so I think in terms of where it's evolving, it's gone really well. The other thing is that students, I used to, and this was a carryover from Jim Hansen. Jim Hansen didn't like to grade homework, and I understand. So what he would do is he would have a preparation quiz every class, and it would be what we learned last time. Here's 2 or 3 questions.
Yeah.
And then students didn't like that. They
No
thought
kidding.
it was too much quizzing.
Yeah.
So the other thing is then I said, okay, now I'm going to have you turn a short assignment in every time, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, but not 2 hours. A short assignment to get your hands in each thing that we do, and then I'll do an occasional preparation quiz. A do behind quiz. What we just did, now do you understand it?
Yeah.
What we just did, now do you understand it? And so what I negotiated with this class this time was I would do a quiz every Wednesday. That would be the 2 previous classes, and it would be really short. It would be like 2 questions. It would be on the main things that we had talked about, and then I would give them clues before. I'd say, now, what kind of questions do you think I could ask you on this next quiz? And they'd think, and then I'd
like, hey, that's a good one. I'll write that one.
and I would also just say, I think this is a good question, don't you think? And I would kind of like prime them so they knew what to prepare. And so that's the first time I've ever done this. So now what happens, the other thing that happened was that when I had them turn in homework, they would get frustrated because they thought I was being too critical in the grading of the homework. And they said, well, this is the first time we've ever done anything, and then you pick us apart.
They're kind of pansies, aren't they?
They are pansies.
I don't know. Compared to kind of when I went through and stuff, I'm like, we cater so much to them, and I frankly don't think we push them hard enough.
Yeah.
You know, but it is kind of what it is, and
exactly.
I don't know that we can change it. You know.
So now what I have them do is I say, you turn your homework in. It's just going to be graded. Did you do it? Did you get it done?
Yeah.
I'm not going to pick it apart. I'm going to post the key so you can see if you did it right. We'll talk about it in class. That's just 5 points. 5% of the grade is just getting your homework done.
Yeah.
And then we have about every Wednesday we'll have a 5-point preparation quiz, so it doesn't feel like I'm piling on every quiz. And so now if they do their homework wrong, even if they tried, then they get full credit. And then with the preparation quizzes, there's some incentive for them to not just slide through and just do the homework and nothing else. They have to really kind of think about soaking what they're trying to learn. And then my exams are fair, but they're not easy.
Yeah.
My exams are, I just tell them, I said, I don't give namby-pamby exams. It's going to separate how well you know. If you know it better, you'll do better, and if you don't do as well, you won't do as well. But I give them a lot of information. Here's what's going to be on it.
Yeah.
So I've never had them come back and say, "Gee, I didn't know it was going to be on the exam." I'm very clear about that. I give them a review sheet and a PowerPoint deck and say, "Here's what's coming."
How do you generate that review sheet? Just out of curiosity.
Just what I do is the review sheet is really kind of a summary deck. It's sort of a PowerPoint deck and said, "We learned about this. Here's the things to know. We learned about this. Here's the things to know."
Yeah, I find it interesting because they're like, "Oh, will you create a review for the test?" Sure, and I just list out every topic that we've covered, and it's like it placates them.
I'm like, okay. Exactly.
Sometimes I've joked with them about it, but sometimes I've backed off from joking because some of them are like,
don't want to tease them too bad.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's kind of, in a nutshell, that's kind of where it's come. And I feel good about. I think now the courses, it's meeting my objectives to deliver a lot of value to them. And I think I've struck a balance between pushing them but not pushing them harder than they feel like they can go.
Yeah.
Like you say, I always wish we could push a little harder without them getting snotty, but I think I've kind of hit that balance. Felt my way into it.
And you feel like, I mean, my perception from what I know about your class is you've always taught great content. It's just kind of sometimes the perception of the reception of the content, like, oh, this is too hard, or I don't see the application or something. I mean, to me, my perception is you're still teaching them great content and kind of deep content, but kind of you're bridging the gap for them on getting to that content maybe in a way that they can see it easier.
I do. And I had one student come in, Julian Suku.
I don't know.
He came in and he said, "I don't know why we're doing this stuff." Very first of class, we'd gone through maybe 4 lectures, and he said, at the very beginning of class, "I don't know why I'm learning this stuff." He says, "Can you start every single class with, here's where you'll use it?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, I can." So I've been doing that, and I think that's kind of helped too. So he kind of said, it's harder for me to learn when I'm not sure why I need to learn this. And so I've improved on trying to help them do that. So
it's kind of interesting. I felt like I was a pretty good teacher before I came here to BYU. I totally got beat up that first year, totally beat up. And, I had to humble myself a little bit. And I think I was teaching really great content and really deep content. And those that kind of caught the vision really got a ton of value out of it. Right. But I have realized that, in like student comments, if students suggest something, I'm just like, well, can I do something about that realistically? And if so, then I just do it. And it's really interesting how I think it's kind of evolved that if they're taking the time to tell me, maybe I'll try to figure out how to incorporate that. And, sometimes I'm like, come on, that's not a big deal. But, as I do it, kind of focuses in on the current culture of that current, set of students, and then I have these values of what I want to make sure that I convey that, you know, I still am pretty strict with, and, you know, it's maybe not the way that I think is best, but, you know, they seem to like it. So it's the reviews, it's this overview ahead of time. It's the kind of reminder of the application and, you know, external validation of that application and stuff. I'm just like, okay, yeah, he's teaching us valuable content. Yes, I am. Thank you.
It's kind of interesting. I look back to when I was in the master's program as a student.
So different.
And I think, you know, we're just light years ahead.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I remember, you know, Jim Hansen was teaching the networking class, and it was a joke. You know, and I don't. You know, it just was where things were.
Yep,
you know what I mean?
I'm right there with you. I was thinking back. You know, I took an advanced database class from Jim. I was like, the TA did some stuff, but it was mostly kind of show up, talk a couple concepts that I'm not sure he really knew the depth of, and then, you know, kind of go and we do our own thing. I'm like, I think I gave him pretty good evals too, but, you know, the current set of students would crucify someone who did something like that.
So I mentioned this in the faculty meeting the other day. I think as a group, all of us have really raised the game a lot, and I think that's really been good. And I think the students come out with so much more confidence and more competence, and kind of dialed in and being able to do a lot more. So I feel really good about our group.
Yeah.
You know what the group has really done. I mean, I'm still tuning this or that, but overall, I think we're making good progress.
Well, 4.5s are great evals. You know, really solid in my book. And so is there any areas that you're still kind of uneasy about? Any areas you're working on still? Kind of my objective, frankly, Doug, is that I think you're a great teacher. I think you're focused on the right things. I see kind of the last couple of years this continuous improvement thing, and I want to be able to validate, you know, that, you know, in kind of the report and the way that I see things. But are there, so I see a lot of good going on. Is there anything that you're still kind of feeling like, oh, I need to tune or work on that aspect? Or
the one thing that I still think needs to be worked, as I let them pick a data set near the end, and you saw me giving coaching.
Yeah. You know, I saw a really great group and one group that's like, whoa, if they hadn't done anything yet.
Behind.
Is that representative of the class? Kind of, there's a distribution, or those are the endpoints, or
those were the endpoints. There's this distribution, and most people are a little more towards the prepared.
Yeah. That was my assumption.
Out of the 30 groups I saw, there were probably 4.
They were like that second one.
Flat.
Yeah.
And I thought, guys, you know, things due on
Monday.
raise your game. So I think that in terms of, and I've said things like, and now I just tell them, I say, you know, when I first talk about the project, I say, now here's Kaggle and Google data sets, and here's places where you can get good data. Go out, get your data quickly evaluate whether there's good predictive information on the inputs so that you can see whether you're going to get good outputs. And the groups that do that, they get dialed in really quickly, and then they feel confident, and then I have really good productive. But the groups that don't do that, they're, gee, what data set should we go? We can't decide on data set A or B or C, and gee, I don't know, this doesn't feel very important yet. And so somehow I need to try to take those groups and try to get them there faster. So,
have you had thoughts on how to do that best yet?
No, it's just become kind of extremely clear to me now that now that's the next thing to work on, because I'm still getting maybe 1 out of 8 groups that just, and maybe it's just that they're busy on their other classes, they're dating, I don't know, but I like, guys, come on, you know, the ones that really have the vision and get in quick, then they're able to get a lot out of their project. But these guys, you can't get a lot out of your project when you're just kind of like stumbling along. And so that's probably the biggest thing that I'm working on right now. I feel like the lectures are great. I feel like the content's great. I feel like I'm solving the little problems and cleaned up and tuned, like you say, kind of like tinkering better. And so I think this is what I'll work on next. And then I'm also going to retool, as I said in the other day when my capstone team was presenting, I'm going to take what I learned out of that and just kind of retool it for a little cleaner, smoother delivery. Because sometimes we were learning stuff and then delivering, and then didn't have time to sit back and say, okay, now across this whole piece of things, Do you understand what the Python data types are and why that matters?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you understand what's going on with this library and why that matters? And the answer has been no.
Yeah.
And so the students are able to follow our scripts and do their
Yeah.
chores, but they sometimes don't understand what's going on behind the scenes. So I think that's the other piece that I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in and I'm looking across all the scripts now, and then I'm going to kind of like make the training about those pieces that they're doing better. And I don't think it was a failure at all. I just think you got to kind of step back and just kind of say, okay, now, you know, extract the main things and make sure they get a better grasp of the main things that you're delivering. And so that's what I'm going to do next. But I feel like we've been using Jupyter Notebook, and that's been really good.
So awesome, isn't it? Just
awesome.
kind of like execute, you know, see
little piece, execute, see little piece, and so. And before the semester, I'd never even worked with that. So
well, it's just a couple of years old, is my understanding.
So now I'm confident in that, and so anyway, so those are probably the two main things: is getting the weaker groups going faster on their projects, giving them more structure about finding good data sets early, and that's something maybe I could ask you about. Is I can go in. I keep a history of all the data sets that all of my students have ever worked.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
In fact, I make them turn in the cleaned up data set with their project. But I've wondered, some of these guys will dink around for 2, 3, or 4 weeks trying to find a good data set, when others will go on Kaggle and find a good one just like that.
Yeah.
And I thought, should I give a list of the data sets that have worked and haven't worked in the past? But then what I worry is that the students would just
go choose the good one,
grab one. You know what I mean? And so as it stands now, I purposely don't do that. I say, here are sources, but I haven't picked the good ones out of the sources.
I think that's a healthy learning exercise, to have to kind of vet and see the challenges. So this feels like a kind of a shorter iteration of what I go through in the Capstone class. And when I first came and they have that half credit during the fall, I was a little grumpy. Well, I thought,
it's a lot of screwing around for,
but I mean, the reality is, if you don't have something like that, people waffle back and forth before they lock in, and then they've got to go. And, you know, the feedback that I was given, you know, by Marshall was, had folks in winter semester getting halfway through the semester without a good idea. And so I've really seen the value of that. I wonder if, you know, you have them, like, if you put in milestones, you know, just kind of light checkpoints, not graded or maybe participation graded, but where they select their data set and perform, and maybe you just have that as select a data set, and then, you know, a week later or something, have performed a basic, you know, kind of preliminary analysis on it, and present that to another group, or maybe even take time in class and, you know, kind of facilitate that. That's another way I've changed since I've been here. Is I guess, you know, my evolution as a teacher, I used to be the, hey, I've got content, I've got to get through the content, and I learned that lesson early on at Memphis, that, you know, I don't have to get through all the content. But since I've been here, my philosophy's changed a little bit, in that I say, okay, there's great resources to learn the content, and I'll cover a certain amount in class, but what can I do in class that I couldn't do anywhere else or at another time? So like in the 531 class that I taught, I would have them do their projects, but then I would have them validate their projects in class by presenting to each other. And sometimes I'd make them like a fun tournament style where the best projects would filter up, and it actually helped me in the grading also. But it was something that I couldn't do outside of class, so you had to be there. And so I wonder if you have the students
That's a great idea.
kind of validate the select their data set, and then initially validate their idea and get feedback from their peers and small checkpoints, and then, you know, kind of get them along. Those that are going to procrastinate, you know, are forced into selecting and doing the other things that the good teams are already doing, and the good teams aren't penalized because they're already doing it.
Do you do that in class? Do you have teams present to each other in small groups and just kind of huddle around and talk to each other?
So in 531, I have four group projects. The first and the fourth are more kind of report based, and so I do that, and I do it in a couple different ways. But there's essentially, I divide them up by table, and then they, you know, the first project, I give them a certain amount of time, and now I'm trying to remember. The second project is kind of a tournament structure where they present one aspect of the project during the first round, and then the second aspect, and then the kind of whole thing for the finals, those that make it that far. The first one, though, they're just at a table and they each present kind of their idea. So it takes a little bit of coordinating, but essentially one member from each group is at a different table, and then they present their ideas, and I have the other ones evaluate their ideas through like a Google form or a Qualtrics survey, and then kind of, and it's focused on, okay, what did they do good? What did you like about it? What are some suggestions for improvement? And as they're thinking about that, then they're giving kind of more critical feedback than, oh, you did a great job, or whatever.
Right.
And they've usually spent, like in that case, it's a day or two before the final project, or their final, or the project is actually due. And so I tell them, okay, now take the feedback that you've received and go and tune up your reports. Now in that case, they're working in a group, so group members presenting at each different tables. It gives them the opportunity to come back later and share ideas that they got from their individual presentations, and they all have to know about the whole project too. Now in this case, that's maybe overkill, but splitting up, pitching the ideas, maybe having them rate the ideas on a few different dimensions will kind of get them thinking, especially if you can provide those dimensions ahead of time. And I think the whole thing is, one, it provides interactions between the students, but it's not that much more burdensome on you.
Right.
And you get them moving along far enough that hopefully you get through some of those checkpoints and you see a rise in the quality of the data sets.
Cool. Great. That's a great idea. Yeah.
I'd be happy to kind of share kind of the structures, but I'm not sure if they would match exactly with what you're doing.
I'd be grateful to see them, because I think I could take my objectives and kind of tweak out the objectives, and that are kind of more dialed in for what I need to do. But I think the idea is a great idea. You always do that during class time.
Yeah, and it's tough because you're giving up, valuable class time where you could cover content. But at the end of the day, I think the students appreciate it more because they have a little bit deeper, experience, and
right, absolutely,
and they get feedback. And sometimes I do get an occasional criticism of, I wish we had more feedback from Dr. Maservi, but it's like I can't spend time with all the groups 3 times before you turn it in, and that sort of thing. Right. So I think the benefits outweigh the costs. Let me see if I can. Actually, I probably have let me see if I can find that quickly here, and I'll just show you kind of the structure. Classes. And then the tuning up of things. Yeah, I just think that's kind of the polish after you have the structure
in place. Yeah.
Slides. It is nice teaching a class multiple times in a row and being able to kind of tweak it a little bit. And group projects. So this one is for the first one. So they present to each group is split into a table. So they're with a presentation group, and they essentially have 5 or 6 different frameworks that they go over. At this one, they're creating what is enterprise infrastructure. They've gotten together with their team. They've kind of put together a diagram of all the essential components, and now they come back and they present to the group members. So they have 10 minutes to share the framework, with the others at the team, and then the others are providing feedback on the strengths and weaknesses. And so they fill out a survey, every time. And so they have a little bit of time to make the transition. And then, oh yeah, at the end, after all of them present, I say, okay, now rank order the quality of the frameworks that were presented in your group. So you get kind of the individual evaluation, but then it's like, all right, you got to make some hard decisions here. Where do you place everyone? And then for this one, I recorded just a countdown timer, so I didn't have to keep track of it. And then I put some audio in there. Okay, hit 2-minute warning for you here. And so then, I can just leave that up on the screen, and it just kind of goes, and I'm walking around the room listening and other things. I'm not having to kind of keep track of everything while I do it. And then just some really high, kind of high level points, of what each of the roles should be if you're presenting or if you're evaluating the presentations.
Right.
So that's that first one. And then the fourth one, let's see, is this one. So let me show you this one. So this one's kind of fun. It's kind of a tournament style. It takes a little bit of logistics to figure out how many group members are in each and how they should be assigned, and try to minimize them, kind of filtering up together or whatever. But at the end, I kind of divide that out, and then I keep track of kind of the overall scoring for the different groups and how they've advanced, and I give them presentation-based points for the project based on kind of their performance, and everyone gets points for presenting, but the better ones get more points. And then they kind of filter up. So on this one, and again, this might not apply to your situation, I have little cards that I printed out that have their group letter, so that all the groups are lettered from A to H, I think it was, and then 1 to 5 on there also, so that then they can logistically find where they're supposed to sit and present for each round. There's the yellow table, the red table, the blue table, the purple, and the orange for the first round. And then they kind of consolidate, so the group of evaluators gets bigger as we go throughout the class presentation time. Okay. So I have this projected up front, and then this is actually, we did this in the lab. This was projected on all the screens around the lab, and then I have kind of the guidelines up front, and those guidelines, similar or somewhat similar, I had them divided the project into a few different rounds, so there's different parts of the project that they had to analyze. The basic overview for this is they go out and they capture enormous amounts of data from the field. They have to get it back to a central processing facility, so they have to think about how they're actually transferring that data, and really interesting, do we try to upload everything, but look at the bandwidth constraints coming in here and the costs, and so they're having to scope out this massive thing. But one is collecting the data and getting it back to the central processing facility, and then processing and archiving it, and then making it available on the web. And then also they had to create a budget. So they go through these 3 rounds, and I kind of filter through as they go, and then I have a subset, usually 2 or 3 teams, that present at the finals the next day, and then we all vote on who the finalists are. But then for each round, I've given them kind of criteria of the types of things that they might ask or think about as they're listening to people present. Again, probably maybe a little too intense for what you're doing, but having them provide the feedback, really good, having them kind of critically analyze, and then the onus is really on them to get something out of it. And you'll see some red flags early on, and more importantly, I think the students are like, oh yeah, I've got to get going on this, and so largely they self-regulate. I think
it's great.
Anyway,
would you do me the favor of sending me those slides and your little tournament thing?
Of course.
That would be great, because that'll help me kind of adapt that to. I think that's a fantastic idea. I can see how I could do that. And then after I've had a chance to kind of work on it, I'll probably come back and ask some follow-up questions.
Sure, happy to.
Because I've never done a tournament in there, and what a fun idea. So it'll be good for me to kind of look through it and then come ask a few questions.
Yeah, and it's not perfect, right? And some students will like it more than others, but I think in general, they like that interactivity.
You bet.
And especially if it's not every time, but
right,
just
once
sprinkled.
in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me send this right now.
It also lets them see good ones and bad ones.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and it's like, and you see, and the same thing happens with the capstones, frankly. We kind of have the ideas pitched in the fall, but mid-semester, I tell them, have something working, have something to show, and it's a stop point where some people like, they push to really deliver something by then, and kind of keeps them going, but then they see what their peers are doing, and they're like, we got to level up a little bit. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Game, yeah.
So much better than us, in my opinion, than us trying to have to kind of regulate that. Okay, let's see. This isn't where I want to go right now. I'll send this when I get back, so you don't have to.
That would be great. No, that's fine.
To wait for me. So, I guess from what about content areas? Do you feel good about kind of the algorithms that you're covering and the amount and depth of those?
I do. I think they're really carefully chosen. I have about 10 that I cover, which is about as much time as there is.
Yeah.
And I think that they're extremely well picked. And there are 4 or 5 that I call the foundation ones, and then there are 4 that I call hyper learners, which are more sophisticated algorithms that can learn in different ways, neural networks and boosted trees and decision forests, and
it's such good content.
It is. It's awesome. And those were designed.
I wish we had that. I don't know if you had anything like that in grad school for PhD. I didn't, and I'm like, it's this application of the algorithms that I really would have benefited from.
Me too.
I wrote and understand, the underlying algorithms for things that I'll never use or apply, and it's like, what a waste of time.
I know, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's fun.
Okay. Anything else you want to share with me?
No, I think that's it. So I appreciate your input, and I think your suggestions will really help. I think this tournament and these mini checkpoints are a fantastic idea.
Yeah, they're.
I think I'm doing it too late, and I'm not using the peers to sort of like chew through things and vet and sort of like give feedback. I think this will really help a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll take some more time on your course site, and I might check in with you one more time. Of course, I would have loved to have seen you teach, but the semester is what it is, and I was asked a little late,
I'm not stressing
and so
over that. So I appreciate the feedback. You're already accomplishing what I kind of hoped you would.
Yeah.
You've kind of seen enough to ask questions, and then you also have given me some pointers that will help me improve things, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Which is what these really should be for anyway.
I think so too. And I think too often there's a measure or a metric at the end that doesn't have the real impact of what it could. And some of that just comes by us taking some time to look at each other's material and give feedback. And at the end of the day, you're the one creating the content and architecting the course, and so you got to make the decisions, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, awesome. Thanks, Doug. Appreciate your time. Thanks for
your help.
Thanks for coming over. Sorry I had spaced it and just kind of working away on.
I just want to make sure that you weren't waiting on me to show up. Like, he's not here. Maybe he thinks I'm supposed to go there. Better go check.
Totally spaced it. All right. Thanks. Appreciate you as a colleague. Yep.
Likewise.
Idea out of my idea.
Hi, babe. Hey, yeah, I had thought about taking Josh up. I had called Sam the other day, and he's gonna just stick around. So I thought, maybe not. Just the chance of getting in. What's that?
Okay.
Are you talking to me or someone else?
Oh, sorry. I'm talking. Hold on just a minute. Let me yeah, they want to go out or something. Give me just a minute. We're trying to figure out what. Okay, we're coming in. Um, yeah, whatever you want to do, it's just fine.
Okay. My gut is let me wait till next year and see if I can get some tickets for priesthood session.
Okay.
And then we could go with Sam and Owen next year.
Okay.
So,
Sounds good.
are you okay if we come to our house then, the men during priesthood session?
Sure, that's just fine.
Okay, I think that could be fun. Yeah, I also my dad's last time, here for a couple of years. What about your parents? Are we gonna go up there this weekend?
I don't know. I don't think so, but I'll get back with you, okay?
Okay. Yeah, probably on Sunday if that's okay.
Oh, no. Okay, sounds good.
Are you guys at the farm or at Thanksgiving point?
And I think Abby's locked out of the house.
Okay, the keypad worked today.
She told me that somebody deadbolted. I don't know who. We haven't been there.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. I haven't been there either, so.
Okay, well, hopefully she'll find a way in because I don't have a house key.
No, I don't either. But my parents might.
I think your mom. She keeps bringing them back to us, and I keep saying, "Won't you keep this?"
Yeah. Well, let's make sure she keeps one over there. Okay, sounds good. What time are you going to be home today?
In a while. Probably not for a little bit. We're just eating our ice cream, and we'll probably be here in about 15 minutes. And I might run an errand on the way home.
Oh, okay. So keep on working hard here, then, huh?
Yep.
Okay.
Not fine,
Sounds good. Love you. See you.
All right, love you too.
Bye now.
Bye.
okay, I guess. If you're used to using a Samsung tablet, something like that, you'll know that those don't require batteries because they create electromagnetic field over the screen, which allows them to not require a battery, which is super nice. But anyway, one battery, it'll last a long time. I'm not too picky about that. The part I am picky about, however, is the fact that to get this top button here working, it's a Bluetooth button. It can trigger, whatever you want. It can open OneNote or something like that. But that is actually powered by two separate, tiny little carrying aid size like batteries, very small, that actually go into the top portion here. So that's a little weird using those two little batteries there, but whatever. If we take a look at the box, it does come with some nibs and a nib removal tool. So if the nib at the bottom of the pencil goes bad, you can actually use this metal thing to take it out, and there are some replacement tips for the pen. It looks like there are 3 of them in there, so that is an option. Those are the 2 hearing aid batteries that I was talking about that go into the top of the pen for the Bluetooth button. And finally, it does have a pen holder. It is this thing. It's really not that great compared to some of the other options out there, but it plugs directly into the computer's USB port. So you plug it into the port, you take the pen, and you just stick it in there. The only annoying thing with that on this particular, well, and the other one will act as an eraser, and stylus goes, it's got the button on the top, 2 side buttons, one you'd probably use as like an options button, the other one will act as an eraser, and if I was to go ahead and say open OneNote here, and let's see if I can get to a page that doesn't have my friend's personal information on it, that would be good, right? Let's just go to a separate section. Okay, that's all personal information. That's fine, I think that's something good. Okay, so got OneNote open here. Now this is only a 1080p screen, which isn't bad as far as laptops of the size go, but if you are going to be drawing or writing with this thing, you are going to notice a little bit of pixelation. As far as palm rejection goes, when I'm holding the pen, it seems to be doing a pretty good job keeping my prints off the screen there, keeping it totally separate, which is nice. As soon as I put the pen down, it starts writing with ink. If I go back and click with my hand, it goes right back to being like a keyboard and mouse type thing. So stylus works great with OneNote. Most other Windows apps now work really good with all sorts of styluses, or styli, or however that is properly pronounced. The next thing I wanted to show you was Adobe Photoshop. So out of the box, we load Adobe Photoshop, you get your pen out, whatever. We get a new document open here. You don't have to really even do anything. It does a pretty good job with the settings. So if I was to create a new document here, you can see I have the brush tool open. I can start drawing on it, and it does automatically support those pressure sensitivity type things. You can see there's a thin line, and a harder line. Now, I'm not too crazy about this pen overall. I don't like the way the nib works. It just seems kind of like a hard plastic, which in my opinion is not quite as good as a more softer type of maybe like felt type pen that they use for the stylus on the Microsoft Surface. And again, as I was saying before, this pen, you can see the pixelation on the screen. It's got a high resolution 1080p screen, but compared to the iPad Pro, the Samsung Tab S3, it's just not as good of a screen overall. It's more of a laptop screen than a drawing tablet type screen, if that makes sense. So you can see a bit of degradation there. I personally like this pen. I would use it more for marking things up, like PDFs, writing, that, taking notes, for that kind of stuff. It's great. If you're going to try to use this thing to paint, it'll work. It'll work pretty good. But again, there are better alternatives on the market. And then last thing, as far as those touch buttons go, in Photoshop at least, you hit the top button, it gives you your brush settings, so you can configure that, change your brush without having to go back and forth between all the settings. And then you hold down the bottom button and you can use it as an eraser tool. So there's my eraser. Overall, I think I give this stylus
Historically, it was the first course.